Hi, welcome back to the channel. I wanted us to continue with the conversation about moving abroad, and here we are. We had started talking about Rose, who had a very successful career. Her career hit a roadblock in Kenya, and so she wanted to move. She started looking for jobs, found a job in Geneva, and now was looking to move to Geneva. Now, one thing about Rose is there were quite a lot of questions that she should have asked. There are quite a lot of questions that she did not ask, or she asked, but she asked the wrong people. She asked not people who are not familiar with the environment where she was heading, and that's where we are now. So we are talking about the environment where she was heading. So what happened was her children were in private schools, so she wanted them to at least finish the term. And then so she came in, and there's the house hunting to be done. There's settling down and figuring things out before you're able to move out. So her idea was that her children, she was going to come and she was going to get everything situated before she could move. Now, she had done the calculations of her salary and had looked at how much she was going to be paid. She had talked to a few friends who live also in the diaspora. Unfortunately, they don't live in Switzerland, which is quite expensive. So the salaries, when she was being told, oh, that's a very good salary. Now, when she came to Geneva, she quickly realized that, oh, this salary might not be going as far as I thought. I mean, there were things that she knew were going to be different. She knew she wasn't going to be able to have a full-time house girl. She knew she was going to have to do a bit more housework than she's used to. She knew she was going to, but she did not expect that she was going to be living in an apartment. She thought she could have a house with a compound and stuff like that. She did not expect that it was going to be so expensive and almost out of reach for her. Um, so the first shock for her was the apartment hunt. And I mean, she's like, I have a big salary. Is this racism or what? Why am I not getting an apartment? Now, apartments in Geneva are very hard to come by because for there's just limited space and most people are living in an apartment. So if unless you want to live in the suburbs or outside Geneva, most people live in the neighboring France or in the neighboring states. So unless you want to live slightly far from Geneva, the rents are quite expensive and there's quite a high demand, right? So even for an apartment that you're paying 3,000 francs, which is around what she was going to be paying for the apartments, um, there's a long list of people who can afford it and want it, right? So it took a while for her to get an apartment, not too long because she also had an agent who was helping her. And so within 3 weeks, she was able to get an apartment and then furnishing it. So after about a month, her family were able to come and join her. Now the family came, joined her, and then it was just discussing the normal things. So, where will the children go to school? Yeah, like she's not aware of what goes on in the public system. So, the normal thought of, oh man, public system, I'm not going to, my children cannot go to public school and stuff like that. So she started making friends and yeah, so the children came, and it was during the summer holidays. So the school had not yet started, and she was busy looking for an international school or a private school or something like that. And this is where I come in. So one day I'm at the supermarket. This was 2012, and I'm at the supermarket, and I'm just with my child, and I had been through my rough, bumpy ride and it was coming to an end. And I hear somebody's on the phone talking. And this person was speaking Swahili. And I was like, okay. So I turned and I was like, I don't know this one. Then I said hi to her. Then she was so excited that then we started talking. Yeah, she told me she's new and yeah. Yeah, and then she just told me, oh, yeah, my husband is just over here with my child. Um, and it was very so we got talking, and I was like, okay, this is nice, this is amazing, this is it's just, I don't know, she looked happy to me. She looked happy. Then we met her husband. He said hi, and the children looked lovely. One was about 5, and the other one was slightly younger, about I think 3 years old. Um, my child was almost the same age as the younger one. So yeah, so she told me about how she's having a problem getting a crash and everything like that. I told her, yeah, the waiting list is quite long. I told her also about the joining the schools and things like that. And then she told me that, yeah, the problem is my children. Yeah, I did not want to even consider local school but the private schools are so expensive. Is it really worth it? And I told her, to be honest with you, since your children are so young, I wouldn't even bother with the um, international schools unless it's being paid for by the company that you work for, because to me, I feel like it's not really worth it. The public schools are quite good. Where she was living, she had an amazing apartment in a very good neighborhood, and I told her, I mean, that's a great place. I don't see why you need to pay extra for your child to go to a private school. And I was, so we had that conversation, and we exchanged numbers, and that was it. You exchange numbers and nobody calls anybody. So a few years, I think a year or two afterwards, we meet again at a different event. And during this event, she tells me, oh, yeah, eventually my children did go to public school, and yeah, and everything is fine and stuff like that. And then, but she did not look fine. She just looked more like something was not really okay. And well, it was none of my business, so I didn't ask. And then a few years, I think it was like 2, 3 years later, I meet somebody, and we are just talking about, yeah, how stuff happens in Geneva. This somebody was going through a divorce, and she was like, yeah, I'm feeling really bad. And she was telling me how she has this friend who is also going through a separation, and her friend is having a very hard time dealing with it and blaming herself for it. So we went to have coffee, and then her friend shows up, and it's Rose. So I was like, oh, so then we got to talking, and then Rose was like, yeah, her marriage did not survive the move. And I asked her, so what happened? And then she told me that the thing is, the husband couldn't get a job, and his ego and her things just didn't work out. It was just hard for both of them. It was hard for her, it was hard for him, and eventually they just couldn't make it, and he moved back home, so that at least he can feel useful by continuing whatever he was doing back home. And while he was there, he got somebody pregnant, and she decided she was not going to put up with that, and so now they were separated. And this got me thinking. So this brings me to the lesson for this session, which was one thing that I always say when somebody, because quite a few people have actually reached out to me and asked me, so I'm planning on moving and stuff like that. And what I always say is, move with the idea that your spouse is not going to get a job. For the simple reason that, number one, jobs are very, very hard to get here in Geneva, especially for professionals, because there are so many trailing spouses, to an extent that getting a job for the trailing spouse is really hard, and most companies don't even help the trailing spouses to get anything. So you most of the time, the trailing spouse will have to be the homemaker. And our African men, many of them will struggle with that. You don't come from being a man who was a provider and, a guy who could sit with his friends and do all that. And then all of a sudden now you have to sit and wait for your wife's company to give you a stipend. That just doesn't work. Many couples have actually resulted to either the trailing spouse joining school, if you have not done your master's, you do your master's, or you start your PhD or something, just something to forget about work and get yourself doing something. A few have started businesses, and but I think also it depends on how long you're intending to be here. And a few have just decided that, yeah, I'm just going to be a homemaker. And they have concentrated on raising the children and helping the spouse and supporting the spouse's career. So I find that quite a, and someone said that Geneva is a place where marriages come to die. I don't think so. I don't think it's right to say that. I think it is a place where if you had cracks, they break. Because if your marriage was solely built on him being a provider and him feeling like a man, then you cannot make him feel like a man. Nobody can make him feel like a man. If he feels like a man, he feels like a man. If he doesn't feel like a man, he doesn't feel like a man. But nobody can make him feel like a man, and nobody can make him less of a man. So it's just one of those things. Anyway, I think unfortunately for this couple, they did not make it. They ended up separating. The husband, Steve, married somebody else, and married. She recently got married to somebody else, and life continued. But what you need to realize is that this was not something that was, I think, for sometimes um, people can judge and go and think, oh, she put her career ahead of her marriage or something like that, but it's not. It's a matter of this was something unforeseeable. If there were already cracks in the marriage, even if they would have stayed in Kenya, they would have probably maybe stayed together, but would they still be happy together? Because sometimes you're with somebody because you can't leave, or because living is too complicated, or because you just haven't figured out what to do when you leave, or because you just don't feel like trying something new. But in this case, the man just decided, listen, I'm not going to sit here and watch my value depreciate. He chose his mental health, which I don't blame him for at all, funny enough, because it's better than him staying here and hating her for the fact that now he's moved to a new place and he's not happy. And it ended up being great for the children because then they do not have to watch dad feel sad about himself and to just basically hate the world. I With that, I'm coming to the end of this part of this session, which was quite short. I mean, the story of Daisy was quite short, and those are the lessons that I learned. I think so don't forget to subscribe, and we will talk. Bye bye.